Women today are wondering if they are in an emotionally abusive relationship. And so psychology today is helping them out. Apparently, according to Psychology Today, emotionally abusive relationships can be hard to detect because the abuse is often nuanced and gradual. Hello, everybody. My name is Pearl Davis, and welcome to another episode of Pearl Daily. Make sure you like the video on your way in. Apparently, emotionally abusive relationships diminish your sense of self worth and ability to trust your judgment. These relationships are inherently stressful and can impact your mental and physical health. Think of your body as an informant that communicates to you when things aren't okay or if you're being harmed. So apparently, this woman, Leah Aguirre, a contributor and therapist on Psychology Today, says, I am often asked, how do I know if I'm in an emotionally abusive relationship? Ladies, I'm sure you just would not know. I mean, you got to figure it out. And I always respond with, well, how do you feel in your relationship? This response can be frustrating for those individuals who are looking for a checklist, an itemized list of specific behaviors that can be labeled as abusive. Unfortunately, because emotionally abusive relationships are often complex and more nuanced, the abuse can be hard to detect and put one's finger on. Emotionally abusive relationships often don't start off as abusive. The abuse occurs slowly and gradually, and once trust has been established and the emotions are involved through coercive and controlling behaviors. The emotionally abusive partner creates power and control dynamic that systemically diminishes your sense of self-worth and your ability to trust your judgment and intuition. This can make it hard to see the relationship for what it is. Therefore, it's important to focus on how you are feeling in the relationship, physically and emotionally. Now, the reason everybody I'm reading you this article is not because I'm trying to shove some BS psychology down your throat, but I want to show you how women, and I guess men sometimes, YouTube, no hate speech, not all, um, get into the wrong type of content. And what it does is it rationalizes them leaving relationships and also leaving their husbands, and it supplies the therapy industry. So this Psychology Today, one of the main um, search bars at the top is find a therapist in your city or zip code. So what are they peddling? People to tell your problems to. Problems you used to work out with your friends, family, and you would go to close relatives and maybe figure it out as a family. The challenge is now people are having one kid. We don't live by extended family. You're kind of shit out of luck. You're on your own. And half of your parents are divorced anyway. You can't go to them. And what happens is they have crazy women in colleges that go study psychology. And yeah, they set your wife up with a crazy woman to talk to about her problems in your relationship, and they label everything as abusive. And in their words, her words, her words, it's based on how you feel, not a checklist of what is abuse. For example, it says healthy relationships offer you peace and security. Now, as you guys know, this isn't always necessarily the case. You are not always going to feel secure in a relationship. I'll give you guys an example. A woman could be in a healthy relationship with a guy that's very high status. She probably will never feel secure completely because that guy can trade her for another 22-year-old. Do you think Melania Trump wakes up every day feeling secure? Every day? And is the insecurity that we feel, is it their fault? I mean, it's not like they put a gun to our head and make us feel insecure. Sometimes we feel insecure anyways, regardless of what they are doing. And so what this therapy website is doing is it's saying the feelings that you have are another person's fault. Now, it also says emotionally abusive relationships are inherently stressful, and your body takes on the stress of your emotionally abusive relationship. Below are examples of how the stress of an abusive relationship can manifest in your body. And what I've noticed is in a lot of these websites that are selling you something, they have a tendency to say that the symptoms are symptoms that most people have or everybody has at some point. Chronic headaches, chronic fatigue, digestive issues, weight loss, hair loss, high blood pressure, muscle tension, back pain, inconsistent or irregular periods, insomnia, poor memory loss, and brain fog. So now they're going to ask you to tune into how you are feeling. Take some time to connect with your body and ask how you're feeling. Ask yourself the following questions. So I guess these questions will let me know, am I being abused? It's not clear, so I got to go to my website and I guess, I'm going to see based on these questions if I'm being emotionally abused. Let me see. Have there been any noticeable changes in my mood or mental state since being in a relationship? So if I've had any changes in my mood or mental state since being in a relationship, then if I have, I've been emotionally abused. Okay, interesting. How might I be acting or behaving differently that may indicate that I'm not okay? So if I act or behave differently, how do I feel around or in the presence of my partner? What feelings come up when I think about my partner or relationship? And have there been any noticeable changes in my body or physical health? So, what's actually going on here is oftentimes women are married to a guy that we deem as boring. And what happens is we know that they're a good guy. We know it. But, and that guy provides security, but they have to rationalize a reason to leave. So, what she's doing, or the person writing this, or the people she's consulting with are doing, is they're married to good men and they need to rationalize a reason to divorce. They know he's not actually abusive. So, they bring out emotional abuse. And it's really just because they married men that they find boring or they didn't like that much because they wanted a kid and they got whatever they wanted and they need a reason to leave and they don't want to look like they're a bad person. Because if they leave because they're bored, that makes them look like a bad person. If they leave because they were emotionally abused, then that saves their reputation. That is women's driving force, is our reputation. And when you put it like that, stuff like this makes perfect sense, sort of. I mean, it's still insane. But now, guys, just a quick reminder, if you guys want me to read your comments, questions, concerns, theaudacitynetwork.com, we do have our own chat on here. And all you have to do is go to theaudacitynetwork.com, sign up for our monthly or yearly memberships. And I do read your questions and your comments in the chat. We don't have any yet, so you could be the first one, while we're live every day. And, most of the time on channels, you have to pay for them to read your comment every single time you do a $10 super chat. Lucky for you, we're demonetized. So if you go onto my website and chat in that chat, then it's $10 for the month, $80 for the year. You can put unlimited chats. I mean, please don't put essays, like within reason, okay? Nobody's abused it, so we could keep doing it as long as no one abuses it. Okay. So the next story that we're going to talk about is Caitlyn Clark. So Caitlyn Clark is a woman that is playing in the WNBA. And Caitlyn Clark is a phenomenal basketball player. But the challenge is she is in a league full of liberal women. Now, these liberal women are trying to make things political when really it should, I would argue, be about basketball. So she was nominated to be the Athlete of the Year. And at this awards ceremony, what did they have to bring up? Sexism and racism. Now, as you guys know, women, we do change over time and we often go with what is trendy. So if you have a upper class it seemed like conservative woman in a league full of lesbians, liberals, I'm not surprised when her rhetoric is becoming more liberal. And the reason this actually relates to the stages that women go through in marriage is oftentimes they start off as a Christian conservative woman. And if they're in the wrong friend group, get into the wrong content, or get around the wrong people, they go through different phases where, we change. So let's
For athlete of the year, like tremendous. Yeah, your announcement for athlete of the year, like tremendous, incredible positive feedback. That's what we've seen across the board. There's always going to be some negativity, and I feel like you have had to answer more questions than anybody about the intersectionality of race and gender and sexuality in sport, because of just who you are, and you represent the growth of this thing. And even today, earlier today, Megyn Kelly, she was saying that you were apologizing for your white privilege and the fact that you wanted to uplift Black female athletes and make sure that they were getting the shine, kind of like your pioneers were getting the shine that they deserved. And I just want to know how you feel or how you respond to some of those criticisms when you have to deal with something that it's really not your problem. Like, I feel like it's them looking in a mirror a little bit,
Yeah.
but it still comes down on your shoulders.
I feel like I always have had really good perspective on everything that's kind of happened in my life, whether that's been good, whether that's been bad. And then obviously coming to the WNBA, like I've said, I feel like I've earned every single thing that's happened to me over the course of my career. But also, I grew up a fan of this league from a very young age. Like, my favorite player was Maya Moore. Like, I know what this league was about. And like I said, like, it's only been around 25 plus years. So I know there's been so many amazing Black women that have been in this league, and continuing to uplift them, I think, is very important. And that's something I'm very aware of. And like I said, like, I try to just be real and authentic and, share my truth. And I think that's very easy for me. Like, I'm very comfortable in my own skin. And that's kind of been how it is my entire life.
Yes.
Now, we have to think about this from her point of view. She recently, let's put ourselves in Caitlyn Clark's shoes. She knows that the owners of the league are liberal women. She knows this. She knows that all of her teammates are liberal women. She knows that if she sprinkles a little bit of liberal talking points here and there, maybe she'll get beat up less on the court. Maybe they'll actually put her on the Olympic team. When I think of the incentives here, I can't really blame her for starting to have this rhetoric. Now, does she believe it? Does she not believe it? I don't know. All I can say is the incentives make sense here. Let's say she has a 20-year career. That's her plan. She wants to play in the WNBA for the next 20 years. And it would make her life 10 times easier if she just sprinkled a little bit of liberalism, pandered a little bit, and then she gets better spots on teams. She gets better pay. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's easy for me to say, working in media, just say what you believe, right? I mean, that's easy for me to say. I mean, I made a career out of saying what I believe. But not everybody's in that position. And many times people go through life and they have to make a choice. Say what they believe and get fired from their job, miss out on opportunities, or shut up, pander a little bit, and make more money and have an easier life. And I think a lot of you guys probably relate to that in the chat. I'm sure many of you have been in positions where you've wanted to speak your mind, but if you speak your mind, you're going to have consequences. And, so I'm a little bit more understanding on this. What do you guys think? Let me check the chat. Go along to get along. No, thanks. Yeah, look it. Many of you, I'm sure, will just leave the job. F this. I am not doing corporate America because I'm tired of this BS. But for every one of you that quit, there's someone that said, you know what, I'm going to pander because I would rather do this than go Uber. Choices and trade-offs, right? Make enough money to tell them to suck my diversity. Yeah, and you see that with celebrities, right? So celebrities over the years, what they'll do, when they're younger, they'll say, "You know what? I'm not gonna comment on politics." We saw this with, say, LeBron James. When he was younger, I don't maybe he did, but as far as I remember, I don't remember him being this political. But when he got a lot of money and he got really good, he started saying whatever he wanted. Same thing with Ye, I think he's gotten more extreme the more FU money he had. And he could really say what he wanted. So, I need you to fix the thing. So, I can't particularly, blame her for that. And some of you might say that that's simping, but as most of you know, I've been on the front lines of the simp epidemic for years. And I need to tell you about a quiet weapon being ratcheted up against men that is rarely talked about. It's not just the relentless anti masculinity propaganda and OnlyFans hoes causing the societal issues we discuss on this show. Did you know the average city's tap water contains trace pharmaceuticals and endocrine disruptors? This often includes estrogen from birth control. The average adult consumes a credit card worth of plastic every week. That's 5 grams of plastic a week on average. So it's no wonder that the average male's testosterone is half of the average 50 years ago. Testosterone levels decline 1% a year, and without a course correction, we are headed towards extinction. No matter how based you are, you need to be naturally boosting your testosterone. My friends at CHOQ.com are on a mission to save mankind from extinction by boosting your vitality. Chalk's male vitality stack contains premium and potent herbs clinically studied to naturally boost your testosterone levels, sperm count, and overall vitality. Just one of the many ingredients in the male vitality stack was studied in a double-blind human clinical trial to boost total testosterone 20% in 90 days. When you boost your testosterone, you'll have more mental clarity, you're more capable of making decisions and taking risks. Having high testosterone will also affect your pheromones, so women will find you more attractive subconsciously. Get the Chalk Male Vitality Stack right now on chalk.com, that's CHOQ.com, and use my name Pearl as your coupon code. You'll get 25% off site wide on chalk.com. That's CHOQ.com. Use my name, Pearl. That is the discount code. Okay. So, next on the agenda, I have another guest that is going to come in and speak about the legal system in India. So, as you guys know, this week I did cover a young man who took his life in India because his wife was taking him, or his ex wife was taking him to court and abusing the legal system there in order to basically ruin his life. And he ends up with a hour and a half video detailing all of the abuse. And he ends up taking his life, releasing the video, and has a long suicide letter saying that he did not wish to commit suicide. The only reason he committed suicide was because of the court system. Now, this was much to my surprise because, as far as I knew, or at least at one point, I believed this was more of a Western problem. But the more I learn about men's rights and men's issues, I see that across the globe, they are discriminated against and having these kind of issues. So, when I asked on Twitter about experts that I could bring on the show to talk about the issues in the Indian family court system, one of the accounts that I was referred to was the Save the Indian Family Foundation, the largest men's rights NGO invited by Parliament. And today we have him on the show. So let's bring him up. It says REALSIFF is the account on Twitter.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. Thanks, Pearl, for inviting me.
Hi. Could you tell me a little
Hi.
bit more about your background? I just have their Twitter handle. Maybe we could start with, if you don't
Okay.
mind. Okay.
We created this NGO 20 years back. Okay. So
Okay.
I joined the movement in 2004, and in 2005 we created this NGO as a website.
Mhm.
And in fact, immediately we came across Dr. Warren Farrell's work, Paul Elam, and a lot of American and Western men's activists. We were all, connecting. And of course, I could meet them only in 2014 in the International Conference on Men's Issues.
Mhm.
Yeah. So of course, my personal background is I worked in tech industry. I was an automotive software designer in Bosch, both in India and Germany. And I was also working as a manager in Hewlett Packard in the R&D, the printer department. Yeah, so that is my background.
So,
And then, of course, I quit my job and all to I joined startups. I mean, I created my own startups, and of course, I started running this organization, Save Indian Family Foundation.
so how did you get involved? Was that something you went through personally? You were
Of course,
taken
of course,
to
of
fam
course.
yeah.
I went through something personally, and I got red pilled
Mhm,
in getting that reality, what is going on. And I was shocked what was going on because in those days there were mandatory arrest laws for domestic violence. The whole family can be arrested. The man's parents, his siblings, his brothers and sisters, maybe the sister's minor daughter as well. Everybody will be thrown in prison on mere one line or two line complaint by a woman. Okay, and that is I'm talking about 2004 or 2005. Of course, we got it changed, but here is what you know what I'm explaining here that you said right. There is a
mhm,
perception that all this radical stuff and feminism woke stuff is only a Western problem,
mhm.
and feminism is really needed in India or maybe China and Africa and Middle Eastern countries. That is not really true, and the Western media is throwing a lot of blue pills on the mass of people, right? So that's the problem, and that's what I want to address.
Yeah, so what do you feel like the media gets wrong? Like, what are they not aware of?
No, no, they are aware of everything. They
Mhm,
are just running their agenda. Okay, like CNN, BBC, Guardian, and New York Times, and
mhm,
everybody. They have a completely ideological agenda, and they are spreading this narrative. In about India, they are Indian men. They are writing stuff about patriarchy, misogyny, male-dominated society, everything since last 50 years.
mhm,
50 years. There are so many fake stories, and then there are so many think tanks also.
mhm,
They churn a lot of fake research about India and South Asian countries or African countries and all these countries, and then they use the United Nations to or do all kinds of experimentation. So, for example, there is a big narrative that in India, young women used to be burnt by their in-laws. That's a huge narrative. It was in Oprah in 2001, and they called Bangalore city as the bride burning capital. Okay, but then we found that that entire thing was a hoax. That entire thing was a lie and a hoax.
mm.
So there are so many wrong stuff or false stuff narratives are being built, and they are continued even now. Like India is being called the rape capital and all that. So there's a lot of narrative going on, and unfortunately, people who are in right wing or conservative, even they buy it because it is so powerful.
Mhm. So could you tell me more about how the legal system works in India? Because when I went there like a decade ago, but I didn't
Mhm.
know too much about. You guys have different like states. Is it similar to the U.S. where you have
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
different states?
I'll
Because I
explain
just
you in
remember.
what way it is similar and in what way it is different.
Okay, go
Okay.
ahead.
It is similar to US states. However, our federal laws are more stronger. The laws are not state specific.
Mhm,
Okay. The family laws are more federal. That means it's the same law all over the country. The state, whereas in USA, you go to Florida, you have one set of family laws, and you go to Ohio, it can change,
mhm,
right? So there is a difference. But in India, it is all like a uniform law across the country. That is one important thing. The other thing is the Indian judges of Supreme Court, they retire. And there is somebody called a Chief Justice. Okay. They retire at the age of 65. And then we don't call the state top courts as Supreme Court. We call them high courts. That's the difference. And so we have a hierarchy like the smaller courts, then a high court at the state level, only one high court per state. And then we have the Supreme Court. Okay. And you can continue appealing. Even in a matrimonial dispute, you can go to Supreme Court.
you can go to the Supreme Court for a matrimonial dispute.
Yes, yes, yes. That's strange, right? Isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. You guys have different languages in different states, right? Isn't that true? Yeah, because
But
don't you?
English is common.
Yeah, no.
But India is a predominantly English. So English is an official language, So
Mhm.
its language is not really an issue. The real problem is we have 50 million pending court cases. So it will take us a couple of centuries to clear all the pendency of all those cases unless we use something like an AI in a really disruptive way, which I think is unlikely to happen because the
Mhm.
system is also highly corrupt and we don't have no fault divorce. So a contested divorce can take 6 to 7 years or 8 years. And the alimony, India is by the way, India is actually not a patriarchal country or misogyny, but it is a highly gynocentric country.
Mm.
That means women are put at a pedestal. If you visited India, right, you would see directly, indirectly, women are literally worshipped. Our culture is like that. Of course, there is a balance, but it is not like completely one-sided. Now, the narrative often in the society is that if there is a divorce, a woman's life is destroyed. That is that very traditional kind of a narrative. That is why they expect the man to pay a huge sum of alimony. It can be like 5 to 6 times his annual income. Imagine that, like 5 to 6 years of not savings. It's your annual income. That's what the demands are made by the society and by the, let's say, social people in the society. They mediate or the courts, right?
Mhm.
Now, how can a man pay 5 to 6 times of his income, right? He will take like maybe 20 years to earn that much. He can't pay, he will be bankrupt, right? Then
Mhm.
the man is told, why don't you tell your parents to sell their properties or something and give us money, and why don't you get a loan? Otherwise, they file all these false cases of domestic violence on the man.
So,
So it's basically an industry, false case industry,
yeah.
that is run by the lawyers and the judges, judicial system.
And do you guys have the same immunity for judges and prosecutors there that we have in the
Yes,
US? Oh, you
we have severe levels of immunity. In fact, it's much more than, I can't criticize a judge, particular judge. I will get contempt of court. I will be going to prison for a month.
And then is that why? Because one thing when I first started my show, I would have people come on and argue that India was the country I would hear about the most, as they would say they don't have any of these relationship issues because their divorce rate is very, very low. So is it low because it takes 6 years to get a divorce?
No, 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 no. That I will clarify the data because we are doing research for so long.
Hmm.
India's divorce rate is around 6%. I mean, divorce and separation rate. Whereas there is a lot of fake stuff that's going on that it's less than 1% because that is 20-year-old data. Let me tell you, I am 52 right now. At the age of 30, in my first 30 years of my life,
Hmm.
I only knew two people who were divorced. Okay. I only knew two people who were divorced for 30 years of my life till the year, let's say, 2001.
Hmm.
So divorce is a very recent phenomenon. I mean, last 2 3 decades, like that. However, it is rapidly increasing. Okay, and I'll tell you, in certain groups or families or regions, divorce rate is as high as 33%. Okay.
Okay, so the data is old. And so you're saying the first half of
Or
your life, you only knew two people that got divorced. Wow, what was that cultural shift like? That had to have been, because I mean, I've seen it in America, but my whole life, you always knew someone that was getting divorced, so it wasn't. I can't imagine going through
let me
life
put it this way.
yeah, go
Let me
ahead.
put it this way. You heard of the trad stuff, right?
The
You heard of the trad stuff, right? We have
yeah.
lived that life. We have seen our parents as the trad.
Hmm.
Okay, so I have lived that life. I know how it feels. However, those people in those days, they were not getting divorced, not because the divorce laws were not friendly.
Hmm.
It was not easy to get divorced or go to court. The other problem was that the man and the woman were financially dependent on each other. Like poor people do not get divorced,
Hmm.
you know, because you are surviving on each other for money, right?
Hmm.
You don't want to end up destitute. Okay, it can happen, right? So that's how the country becomes more affluent. People will have more choices. Yeah.
Got it. So I'm curious, have dating apps affected India at all? Has, like, are
Not really,
people
I
oh,
can say.
no? Okay.
Not really, not really. Whether it's an arranged marriage or it is a love marriage or a dating marriage, the risk of divorce and separation is equal.
Oh, it is? Okay. So, can you tell me a little bit more about this case that we've been covering? So, it's received internet. I mean, I'm covering and I'm in America. So, do you see it
Yes,
being effective at like has it gotten attention in India?
yes,
Like what has been the
yeah.
ramification
I
of
mean,
this
I mean, it
video?
has got massive attention in print media, TV media, the top TV channels.
Mhm.
Let's say Republic or India Today and Times Now. These are all top TV channels,
Mhm.
and the CNN's equivalent, CNN 18 and all that. They all have covered it several days. So it's like a top story going on for last 48 hours.
Mhm. And do you think, like, have there been any arrests made? Can she even be prosecuted for like false claims or they're
Uh,
looking into the judge?
when a man dies, when
Mhm,
a man dies, he gets murdered. He gets murdered by his wife, or this kind of a situation. There is a chance that she may be arrested. She may be in the prison for 14 days or so. That's it. After that, nothing much happens. She gets released under bail. She may right now apply for anticipatory bail, which may get rejected.
mhm.
But generally, for men, this is not that stringent, and they're quite lenient. So the consequences for this kind of a woman are not high.
Okay. And what
There is one more ironic point.
Mhm.
All the false cases she filed on the man, they will continue running against his parents. So he's dead, but his parents have to keep facing those false cases for
Mhm.
next couple of years,
Wow.
because all these false domestic cases are filed on the parents as well. So their son is dead, but the parents will be running around those courts.
And that's because of the dowry law, right? There's some
I
law
mean, the
with
Indian domestic violence law, they consider the whole family, because India used to have a joint family system. So even India has two domestic violence laws, by the way. So one is the law related to dowry or cruelty, which was actually before the American domestic violence law. This law was passed in 1983. The American domestic violence law, WAVA, was passed in 1994. So we are ahead of USA. And then in 2005, India got more Joe Biden style domestic violence, law, which Joe Biden drafted. So we have two domestic violence laws. Okay, one has restraining orders and all that, which is recent. But the earlier one, which is more related to dowry and cruelty, which is 1983. Yeah.
Are you guys seeing the same trends there when it comes to like women not having children, women getting educated? Is
Yes.
that that's
Yes.
it's all the
Yes.
same in India? Okay.
I mean, the age of marriage of women, in every decade it has shifted by 4 or 5 years. So let's say 15 years back, I will be surprised if I hear people marrying after 30. People used to get married. I mean, women used to get married around 24, 25. Now, average woman marries 28, 30, kind of. So the age of marriage of women is shifting due to a lot of government policies as well. Because to control the population, they are encouraging women in this way to because Indian population they are trying to control just like what they did in China.
Okay, well, is there anything else that you think an American audience should know about India, or about this case that you think is important?
Yeah, about this case, I would like to say that just half an hour before committing suicide, he tweeted to Elon Musk and Donald Trump. So he felt that there is some hope for men as long as there is Elon Musk and Trump doing something. So just imagine in a distant place like India, there are men who are counting on them. So that tweet is there in the. I will share it. So
Mhm.
and he uploaded a video, that entire video in Rumble, because he believed that no, nobody will, there will not be any censorship. So this censorship issue, free speech issue, and all these are universal. I mean, that is what we are all facing, and we were all, banned and shadow banned and deplatformed from many of the social media. So,
Mhm.
so that's what I can say. That is the problem is same
Mhm.
that we are facing. One of our Supreme Court Chief Justice, who just retired just now, he said, Indian Constitution is a feminist document. He said that.
Needs a what? A feminist what?
Indian Constitution is feminist.
The Constitution is feminist.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you very
He
much.
was a Harvard educated. He was a Harvard educated. He had a Harvard PhD. Okay, so he had one leg in the
Really?
Harvard, always. Yeah, yeah.
So he had the
That's what we say.
wow. Well, thank you very much for coming on. We'll
Thank you.
definitely have you back for different cases. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And where can you tell them
Thanks
where
for
they could
inviting.
find you? Your YouTube website, whatever.
We have our website, saveindianfamily.org. That is where most male victims land to get support. So we have Telegram groups and all. And our Twitter ID is real SIF, real SIFF. Real is real, just like real Donald Trump, and SIFF. S for San Francisco, and I and FF.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Okay, guys. So,
you.
a lot of times I think that the passport bros can sell dreams. This is the commonality I've gotten from people across the world, is that these issues really are universal no matter what country you go to. He's been an activist. Yeah, he has. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to react to was I saw an old clip from Jesse Lee Peterson, and I just thought it was hilarious. Oh, I don't know if they'll copyright me. Dr. Phil. Okay, guys, I'm going to do it. But if they pull the stream, I'm going to start another one. I think they warn you. I do. I think they warn you.
Has been tweeting about the Earth's alleged underpopulation crisis. But should we be concerned? We've agreed that it's not birth rate that's causing any kind of climate change. It's not the driver, at least, that's for sure. You think it should be, people should qualify and be tested. You think people should be tested. You think we should just feed them and let them age out.
Voluntarily.
Yeah, right.
I mean, so as a society, I mean, we value freedom, and the reproductive choice is one of those freedoms. And I think the better approach is to try to educate people so that they're responsible when they have children and they can care for them. But I mean, I think having the government getting involved in anything like this, I mean, China's done that. It's a disaster over there.
I completely agree with you about reproductive freedom. I think that's the most important thing we need today. Hundreds of millions of couples are denied their right to not procreate. But you were mentioning
how's that? Though?
Go ahead.
How are they denied that right?
They do not have the contraceptive services, reproductive health services that they need. Those are not provided. And maybe people should supply their own, but they can't afford it because they're having more offspring that they can't feed.
Where's that?
Just about everywhere. Try to get a sterilization here in America when you haven't had kids and you're only 22.
That's true.
We're not allowing people to not breed.
You see people like that all the time, and you can put an IUD in. A copper IUD is effective for 10 years. It's inert.
Have you ever walked in a grocery store and seen a lady with a bonnet on her head with 8 kids walking behind her? You think that she's being responsible? You think that she's really taking into consideration what she's supposed to do responsibly? You think that she's not on Section 8 housing? You don't think that we paying for her to house her kids, who's probably going to grow up and steal my wheels off my car?
I disagree with all this crap that I hear. I grew up with 6 brothers and 7 sisters at a time when, I grew up on a plantation in Alabama, and we grew up in a little hut house, bathroom outside. And my family raised an amazing family, children. But what the difference was then than it is now is that before you had babies, you got married. So you have the father and the mother in the home. And while the father was out earning a living, the mother was watching over his children. And so you were able to raise decent children. We didn't have government in our lives at the time. And so we were able to do that. And in America, we were not allowed all these illegal aliens and refugees to come into our country. So our government were not taking care of folks from other parts of the world and the families in America. We took care of ourselves.
I think you've pretty much.
I don't know. Jesse Lee Peterson kills me. Oh, he's so funny. I'm going to keep going. Hold on.
Pissed off everybody. But you said there's not anything you've heard that you don't think is crap. So what do you think? You said what you don't think. What do you think?
I know that we need to restore the family. We need a smaller government because government don't make anything work. They screw you up. We need to stop taking care of women who are having these babies out of wedlock.
Correct.
We need to stop taking care of these women who are coming from other countries. We need to stop taking care of their babies. We need to take care of American families first by getting them away from the government and restoring order.
Okay, you're a pastor, right?
Yes.
And you're a radio host?
Yes.
Okay, and you said you believe white people should have more children?
We definitely need white babies. And I tremble at the idea that white babies, that the white group is going down in numbers, because if you lose white folks, America, it's over for America. Because if you notice, white people tend to be more innovative. They're more creative. They have
Look at her face. She's so mad.
ideas about things. All these other races don't do nothing but
Like Dr. Phil doesn't know what to do. Wait, hold on. Hold on. Wait.
because if you notice, white people tend to be more innovative. They're more creative. They have ideas about things. All these other races don't do nothing but destroy. They don't build,
But
they
he's wrong.
destroy.
He's wrong.
I said you'd piss off everybody. I was wrong. Now you've pissed off everybody. Do you have a story or a question?
My favorite thing was just the face of everybody in the room was so mad. My producer says the face of the white dude was like, "What did I do?" I'm just saying, being white's awesome. We don't get. He's funny. He's funny. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to give you guys an update on.
Yeah, but then they can get to
Is apparently this woman.
know the new.
So I got a text this afternoon. And you guys know the woman I've been telling you about that she had sex with 100 men. Now she's looking to have sex with 1,000 men. Well, apparently she was on my show last year. And mind you, sometimes these panels I really try to block out because they were really exhausting. But I actually do remember this show. I don't know why. I literally forgot about her, so she must not have been that entertaining. But this was her on my show a year ago.
Yeah, but then they can get to know the new 22-year-old.
Yeah, but not all guys fancy fresh fucking meat. You know
Sure,
what I mean?
they'll get to know the 40-year-old when you're 60.
Some guys have fetishers for older women. Like,
I'm curious, what do you guys make a month on OnlyFans?
personally, I don't like to say.
Yeah, same.
Okay. Is it over 6 figures a month?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it over 6 figures?
I just said I'm not saying.
Okay, fine. So did you don't want to...
Why does every time I come on a podcast, everyone always asks that question, don't they?
Because we want to know.
They want to know what
It's
amount.
actually
Well,
quite
is it
amazing how much you guys
Yeah, it's enough.
But it's not.
I wouldn't do it if it wasn't enough. Like,
He charges more than she does per month. The brunette charges more than the blonde per month. So if she's working 6 figures, she's got to be earning it, logically. It depends on like following and stuff like that. And like obviously you do a little bit less, don't you? Stuff like that. It just depends.
I mean, I don't fist my arsehole, but if you want to see that, subscribe.
I had enough. I spoke to enough hookers in a year that I think I'm permanently traumatized. You know what? Go to theaudacitynetwork.com because I did that for you. I love you guys. You know, I really like to put in an entertaining show. But my God, that was a long year of my life. So go to theaudacitynetwork.com, monthly or yearly membership. Pearl, you got blackpilled. I really did. I really did. I'll tell you what, because we have this idea that these are special women. This will never happen to anybody you know, none of the people in your life. This is just crazy city behavior. But most of these women were from small towns and good families. Lily Phillips, her parents talked to her every day. She's from an upper class family in England. And I would just see woman after woman that would be Christian, Muslim, small town, big town. And yeah, blackpilled me. It really did. Okay. So next on the agenda, we are going to be reacting to a debate that I saw on YouTube. And what I noticed is, hold on, guys, I gotta get the link. What I noticed is, oftentimes we think there's a big difference between conservative and liberal women. And I don't really see much of a difference in the two. And many times we think that there are these special women that are different, but when it comes to life choices, it's pretty much the same thing. Where did I get this? Autumn. Oh, here. Okay. So let me pull. Okay, this is the debate I wanted to react to.
Know where I'm coming from on this, and I'm very excited for this break. This is our final episode of season 2, so sit back, relax, and let's dive into one last
Also, for a second, I'm going to react to the YouTube comments. One says, thanks, Pearl, for bringing on SIFF. By the way, AI engineer was by his wife to pay $2,400 per month per maintenance, besides paying $360,000 one-time payment. Fazell says, Jesse Lee Peterson says nothing about the truth. If you guys have a question, comment, or concern, go to theaudacitynetwork.com, $10 a month, $80 a year, and just be a part of the live chat. Thank you.
memorable opposing views discussion together, and it's a really good one, you guys. Stay tuned for updates on what's coming next for season 3 by hitting the subscribe button and the notification bell. And until then, thank you for being part of this community. Welcome to the Ellen Fisher podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for being here. I am so looking forward to this conversation, and I have a bunch of really hot topic questions to get into. But before I do that, I wanted you guys to share a little bit about your story and what led you to being passionate about this topic. I'll ask you first.
Yeah, so right now I'm a physician, but when my content started and I started being a lot more vocal about feminism, women's rights, kind of that whole sphere, it started because of the Texas SB 8, which was the 6-week abortion ban. And I woke up one day as a med student at the time and just like really frustrated and really angry about it. And TikTok is the place that people go to vent those kinds of opinions. And so I just was like, you know what? I have an opinion and I have to say something. And it was a good outlet. And that video went viral and I was not expecting it to at all because I didn't have a platform at all. And so then I kind of just fed off of comments and interaction. And I was like, well, I have opinions if y'all want to hear them. And so then it kind of just snowballed. And now I'm really passionate about being as good as an advocate as I can be.
Awesome. My name is Isabel Brown. I am a full-time content creator, and I host a live stream every day where we talk about a whole host of issues, not just women's related topics and conversations, but what's going on TikTok, politics, religion, dating, the whole nine. And I never expected that this would be something I did for a career. I too actually was pre-med way back in the day and have a few degrees in biomedical sciences. In graduate school, more on the public policy side, women in the process. It's why you're watching women become so controversial in and of itself. We have a Supreme Court justice in the United States who can't answer the question, what is a woman? You're watching women's rights advocates claim that the best trajectory for women moving into the future is in fact disintegrating what we would understand women.
Okay, so I want you guys to pay attention. The non-feminists claim to care about family, but they refuse to take away the incentives or argue about the incentives that are destroying the family. They'll go back and forth about abortion, the men in the women's locker rooms, all this BS that, let's be honest, abortion's going nowhere. The ladies did that to themselves, the men in the women's locker rooms. I mean, the ladies, they're the ones who pushed that, so I don't feel bad at all. But the innocent people here are the men that are victims of the family court system. And I'll be really surprised if they cover that at all.
Womanhood to historically be. Heck, you're even watching feminist movements applaud men taking over women's spaces and calling it inclusivity in society rather than what it is, which is just frankly misogyny. So I wouldn't necessarily identify with the postmodern fourth wave feminist movement we find ourselves in today. But feminism historically has done amazing work for women and truly brought us to the.
Now, the early feminists bombed places. They were known as terrorists. So a lot of times you hear the conservative commentators saying first wave feminism was good, second wave feminism was good. Well, their entire goal was to destroy the nuclear family from the beginning. So what parts of early feminism were good, right?
The even playing field of equality that we get to live in every day as the status quo. Okay, what about you?
So I would absolutely identify as a feminist. And for me, feminism is about equal rights, it's about equal opportunity. And when you talk about fourth wave feminism, I specifically appreciate and would identify with fourth wave feminism because I think it's essential to recognize that we are three white privileged women sitting here having this conversation. And a really big part of fourth wave feminism is the recognition of intersectionality. And so, sure, there might not be legal barriers to opportunities to us now, but there are still very much different prejudices and stigmas against women, especially when it comes to being working moms and things like that. And when it comes to, again, different identities, when it comes to women of color, women in poverty, it's recognizing that they also need to be supported and they also need to be seen. And when it comes to things like our unpaid labor and unseen labor and mental load, those are all things that fourth wave feminism is really trying to bring awareness to because it's so much easier to ignore.
What do you think about that? That's an interesting thought. I'd be curious to know how you are seeing these prejudices continue to exist against women. If in fact they're not legally, structurally in place in America today, how are those manifesting from your point of view?
Yeah, so things like the gender wage gap. So women are still earning less than men with the same degrees, with the same positions. Women also get questioned more often when they try to balance work and parenthood. Things like that. When it comes to just the opportunity to do what you want to do with your life, you want to have the same opportunities as men, both financially and from the perspective of just like the societal appearance of what you're choosing, where men have a lot more freedom to not be constrained by gender norms when it comes to their life choices. If they don't want children or they don't want to be married, a lot of people don't question that. A lot of people are just like, yeah, that makes sense, you know? But when a woman chooses that, there's a lot of that sort of stigma behind it of like, oh, well, surely like you'll change your mind. Surely that's what everyone would want. And so that's what I mean when I say there's that stigma and there's that pressure pushing against women who want to go outside the traditional gender norms of what we would think women should want for ourselves.
That's so interesting because truthfully, I encounter the exact opposite in spending my time online or on college campuses or with women's organizations. If anything, I think our postmodern society has built a very strong stigma against traditional gender norms. You look at every headline in Cosmopolitan magazine, for example, encouraging women to not have children, to not get
So
married.
notice the language. The language is still society's making me do this. It's almost as if we're children, right? Well, society's shaming us for choosing this, or society's encouraging us to do this. No, nothing's stopping us. 3% of Gen Z women are married. And Isabella, she just got married in her late 20s. Okay, not wrong, not good, not bad, but it's not traditional, right?
to be as promiscuous as possible and never to be committed in
And
their
the other girl, I'm pretty sure she's engaged or in a long-term living relationship. I don't know her as well. I just know Isabella's because I made a spreadsheet collecting data from conservative women to track if their age of marriage, number of kids was any different than liberal, and it's pretty much it's it's the same. It's the same.
their personal dating relationships. The Surgeon General of the United States of America a few weeks ago actually issued an official declaration that parenting is theoretically hazardous for your health because it might make you more lonely than if you never had children to begin with, which was an odd train of thought to begin with and not incredibly logical. So you're watching the establishment media, you're watching establishment healthcare and physicians, you're watching college campuses, your favorite celebrities, Hollywood influencers all strategically peddle this narrative for women that the only way to be an empowered, enlightened woman in 2024 is to abandon tradition, to abandon gender norms, to abandon femininity in many ways, and certainly to never get married or have children. So that is interesting that there is that tug of war still in America, but I certainly think today gender norms are what the stigma happens to be rather than buffing gender.
I wish we could talk less in the abstract and I could get more specifics, right? Like, what does that mean in real life? Like, what does that mean in your life? Like, when were you pushed one way or another? Who pushed you? So, okay, let's say it was your school. Who picked the school? You don't have to go to college, right? That's a choice. I understand maybe under 18, but after 18, you're an adult.
Norms. But it's interesting you bring up the gender wage gap. You know, this is a conversation we've had for years and years and years in the United States, and certainly historically has been true decades and decades and decades ago. But there have been countless studies proving that the gender pay gap does not exist when you account for different career choices, working full-time versus part-time. The census data that typically accounts for this 84 cents on the dollar or 84% figure even goes so far as to skew the numbers that teachers, first primary and secondary teachers who are overwhelmingly 3/4 female, who work 38 weeks out of the year. They do the math that they work 52 weeks out of the year to make it seem like they're earning substantially less money than men. But that all is obviously.
So I understand there's a time and a place for data. I'm not saying, I'm trying to be careful with my words. I'm not saying data is wrong or bad to use. But when making a point, I always like to use real life examples that other people can think about if they're true or not in their life. And the challenge we're going to get is she's going to cite a study and it's going to say her point, and the other woman's going to cite a study and it's going to say her point. And the challenge with data is a lot of times they get their funding from either traditional conservative organizations. That's where you get all the Michael Knowles, Daily Wire stats that are pushing marriage, right? Because they're institutes that, again, that's their thing. They're like Christian organizations. Then the liberals, they have their left-leaning organizations. And if you get results that go against your ideology, that's the challenge I have with data, right? I'm not saying it's bad or good. We can look at each study, but I prefer to know how it's affected your life, right?
Not true, has been proven to be wrong over and over again. And interestingly, is statistically dramatically changing because when you look at the careers women are choosing in the norms of 2024, let's look at medicine, for example. You're a physician, a first-year resident. Historically, in the 1960s, only 8% of med students were females. Today, over 50% of medical students are females. And
that's terrifying. That's terrifying. I'm not saying medicine's going to go downhill. I'm not going to say that because I can't. I am not saying that. I'm not saying, I am not, that is not what I'm saying. I'm just going to continue. That's it.
Physicians are statistically the highest paid consistent employment in the United States today.
Medical students include nursing and techs. How did I know? How did I know there was some catch? I'm not going to say it. Look how great the healthcare system is now. I didn't say that. I just read a comment. Okay. All I did was read a comment. I did not say that.
Yeah, so I've actually read the complete opposite studies. From the studies that I've read, specifically when people, men and women, are in the same role, so a managerial role or a supervising role, women make less than men in the exact same roles. Same with people who have advanced degrees, so masters or doctorates. Women who have the same degrees as men will statistically make less money than men with those same degrees. So we're reading different studies and living in different realities, it seems. But I want to really go back to what you were saying about the media and everyone pushing women to not get married and not have children and demonizing this sense of tradition. And to be clear, I'm pro choice in all different ways. And I believe when I see the media pushing these things, I don't see it demonizing the traditional way of life. I don't see it demonizing, people who want to homeschool or who want to be stay at home moms. I see it as them opening the, opportunities for women to choose what they want to do, because historically women have been told that if you don't want to be a stay-at-home mom, if you don't want to dedicate your entire life and being to your children and family, then you are wrong and you're going to be unhappy. And so now the media is kind of swinging that pendulum, which, like, admittedly, pendulums swing a little bit too far before they normalize, right? And I'm not saying I have anything wrong with it, but I think that what the media and what
Okay, this idea that things are going to swing back is them selling you hope. And that's a whole business. It's selling you hope, right? No. Usually trends just continue. And if they're not going to continue, there's generally indications that it's going to go the other way. I know there's a lot of women in dresses cooking in the kitchen now on social media. But when I look at Gen Z, 3% are married. And the other thing they're not taking into account is in the United States, 90% of people were farmers up until the 1900s. I actually have it on here. Hold on. I pulled this up earlier. So I don't know what they keep saying that, they supported men's dreams or whatever. I don't think most of men's dreams was to be a farmer, because the day they got the option to not be farmers, a lot of men said, I'm not doing that anymore. So that's the detail they keep skipping over, is that, yes, the women stayed home with the kids, but they had more kids to help on the farm. So I don't know what, like, his other option was factory worker and coal miner. What dreams was he, if he wasn't born into an aristocratic class or ran for office, what dreams did he have? Okay, I'm going to continue. Oh, here.
people are really trying to portray is that you do not have to fall into this historical role. You can date around, you can choose to not get married, you can choose to not have kids, and all of those things are valid. And for the longest part of history, women were seeing the exact opposite messaging. We're encouraged to, marry whoever and have kids because that's what makes you happy. And a lot of our grandmothers and mothers were like, oh, guess what? It didn't make me happy. And they're encouraging the younger generation.
Now, this is something that conservatives think is untrue. When they say, my mother and grandmother told me, or the women of the past weren't as happy as they say, I have to agree with them, and I'll tell you why. So when I was doing my shows, I would get people that came from seemingly more traditional countries. Nigeria was one I could think of. Zimbabwe is another. Countries that were a little bit more traditional, say, than the West. As we saw before, gynocentrism is a problem among everywhere. But one thing that I often heard from the daughters that migrated to the UK, because a lot of immigrants came to the UK in the last like 50 years. So a lot of them were second generation. They would tell me that the reason that they chose to go to school and not prioritize marriage was because their mother told them not to. And I just heard that too many times from women that didn't know each other. The mothers would be married 30, 40, 50 years, and they would still tell their daughters to wait to get married or not to do it at all. So what am I supposed to do with that? I don't know. I don't think that's like a nice conclusion. I think a lot more women trashed their husbands than we like to admit, but it kind of lines up with what we're seeing now. I don't think people of the past were so different than the people of today. There's just more incentives and choice now. So, yeah, okay, I'm going to keep going.
To make whatever choices make them happy.
That's an interesting perspective, namely because statistically, even today, married women with children are overwhelmingly self-reporting themselves to be the happiest in society. We're overcorrecting in so many ways for maybe potentially flawed narratives of the past or incomplete narratives of the.
Now, again, I got to look at choices. I don't think women are as monogamous as we once thought. And the reason I think that is because the second that women got to choose non-monogamy, too many women chose it. You know, if you poll men and women on if waiting till marriage, for example, is important to them, more men rank that as important than women. So are married women with children the happiest? Probably, but it doesn't really, I don't think that stat shows fully because you're not taking into account the women that were married and had children and chose to leave, right? Like the divorcees. So it's almost like a cheater stat. I don't know. I don't know if I'm making sense, but okay.
The past, which we call a pendulum shift, but honestly looks a whole lot more like propaganda to me when we're inventing.
And this is the thing, they both have propaganda. They both do. The right and the left, it's equal. Okay, the left has a little bit more pull. So, you know, the left has more, but the right wants men to get married and they want men to fix society because, again, it scares them what they're going to do with all these single women. And if men don't keep taking bad deals, society will fall apart. You know, if men are treated poorly by the military, let's say, and enough men say, you know what, I'm not doing this, that becomes a problem for everybody. If men say, you know what, I'm not getting married anymore, well, that becomes a problem for businesses because women love to spend. So men make the money, women spend it. This isn't even discounted because we have TikToks of men and women saying, my money is my money, his money is our money. So this isn't even discounted, right? Then on top of that, politicians need the birth rate to come up. They don't know what to do. If men say, you know what, I'm not having kids with these ladies, they're terrified. So both sides have incentive to lie.
Realities that don't reflect indicative in normal society. The Family Stability Society, I can't remember the exact group that ran this study, but from 2023 found that 40% of women who are married with children self-report their lives to be incredibly overwhelmingly happy. Only 22% of unmarried women with children feel the exact same way. So,
well, and the question I have is at what age? At what age are they polling the women? Because a 25-year-old hot woman, I can't think of anybody on the planet that has a better life. A 55-year-old ex-hot woman, I can't think of anybody else that has a worse life because she had that amazing life and now it's gone forever and she'll never get it back.
it's not really manifesting in society the exact same way that we're seeing overwhelmingly portrayed in these headlines, in movies and TV shows, in studies conducted by academia, and what's said by presidential candidates of the United States. So it seems to me this isn't so much of a societal pendulum shift as it is an overwhelming narrative that is being pushed onto the next generation to convince them, hey, I know this is what's being proven in society. This is probably what's going to make you happy. Just because that's how we've done things in the past, we can never consider that moving into the future because we have to be progressive for the sake of being progressive.
Trust me, we can all use a little support when it comes.
Yeah, you are not plugging your ad on my stream. Hell no.
We're reading different statistics because, again, I've read many statistics that show that typically mothers and people.
Again, this is why I don't love statistics, because they're going to go back and forth. My stats, your stats, how did you conduct this study? Da, 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 da. I prefer good faith conversations about what we've seen in our actual lives. So, my question is, are your parents married and are they happy? Did you have friends growing up? Are they still married and are they happy? Did they have a relationship that you would want? Now, does everyone want to answer that honestly on camera? I don't know. But yeah, data can be manipulated. And what generalizations do people, which I can't make on YouTube, can people relate to? What generalizations can we make and people say, oh, I relate with that?
Who give birth are more likely to suffer from mental health conditions than women who do not, because it is more of a stressor. There's all of that unpaid work, unpaid labor, and unseen mental load that women have to carry. And we also have to look at the way that these surveys are asked, because a lot of times the questions that are asked in a certain way that want to get a certain answer from you.
And if you don't believe me, right, look at all the traditional conservatives on Twitter begging Lily to find God. The stuff is biased, right? Both ways.
You. But I think, again, when you see progression and you see progressive ideas, you see it as people pushing that idea as the only correct way, where I just view it differently. I see it as opening up opportunities for people and recognizing that all of these different ways of life are valid. And again, through history, like historically, women have been given these very narrow options and told. And when we talk about propaganda, right, I see that as propaganda. I see it as propaganda to say that you will not be happy unless you have a family and children, because for a lot of people that is not true, and that's also not necessarily a choice. If you don't meet the right person or you get stuck with the wrong person,
Absolutely.
it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be happy. And so many of our mothers and grandmothers have told us, this did not make me happy. It wasn't the marriage itself, it was the person. So ensure that you are, aiming for an equal partnership.
And what we found out about us ladies when feminism, birth control, no fault divorce was that women do not like average men as much as we used to think. When you take out money, unfortunately, the sexes go apart. When you give women all the choice in the world, we have a tendency to choose to be by our dang selves. I don't make the rules. I didn't make this world, okay? But all the data, that's what it indicates.
And, make sure that you are choosing your partner wisely, because women have not been given that opportunity. Women have not been, encouraged to really make those intentional choices. It's always been about checking a box instead of living life intentionally.
Yeah, and look, I think the spectrum of human happiness obviously is a subjective conversation to have. It depends on the individual. It certainly depends on one's.
And that's the other thing I don't like is in one day I could feel happy in the morning and mad at night. So am I a happy person or an unhappy person? Like happiness is a feeling. I don't think it's a state. So I don't really like studies that use happiness, because how do you measure it? And like, what does that even mean?
circumstances. I hope joy is something people continue to choose no matter what their circumstances are, but that speaks more largely to the mental health of our population. What I do have a problem with is not the expectation that people can make different decisions for their life based on their individual circumstances or their own personal autonomy. It's this idea that the narrative we are being pushed every single day by the machine, whatever you want to call that, government, healthcare, media, and everything in between, seems to be overwhelmingly convincing you in whatever way, shape, or form that what we understand to be traditionalism is wrong, that marriage is wrong. In fact, having children is wrong. That we're sitting here in Los Angeles filming. The Los Angeles Times a few weeks ago had a headline saying you are an inherently selfish person if you want to have a child. And they were making this claim through the lens of climate change. But I can't tell you how many headlines I see every single day with statistics and data and evidence from the experts that you are a bad person if you want to get married, if you want to have children, if you want to go through this journey of traditionalism that we often scorn at in postmodern.
I don't want to bring morality into this. It's not bad or good. It is just statistically not going to be an option for the majority of people. Because even now, only 20% of couples are married with kids. That trend seems like it's going to get worse, not better. I don't want to say worse, but like it's going to continue going that way. There's no data that indicates it's going any other way. So anybody that's saying that's an option for most people is selling dreams. That's what they're doing. And I think it's tough because, you know, it's not something, it's tough to accept, right? Because that's what we've seen on TV. That's what, you know, we grew up around. But the world is changing. Unfortunately, the cat's out of the bottle. I don't see anything that indicates it's going the other way. I see zero evidence to indicate it's going to go that way, not this way. Okay. Rob said, I can't say there's a certain someone who isn't as bright as men. Not going to say it. I can't. Rob also said on the website, which if you guys want to comment, question, comment, or concern, you go to theaudacitynetwork.com, links in the description. $10 a month, $80 a year. You get me to read your comments during shows. Rob says, I knew a coal miner that later became a medical transcriber. I worked with residents and nurses almost continuously. Specifics are important. Alexander said the Dadvocate and Roma Army said on stream they would be fine with porn stars and OF chicks becoming the teacher of their kids because they wouldn't want to judge a woman based on her sexual history. Even some of the most based women in the space still have feminist tendencies.
Modern society because it's viewed as the opposite of progressivism, when in reality, that's just not making people happy. We're in the midst of the biggest mental health crisis of all time in Western society, certainly within the context of Gen Z. And for the first time ever, young women are actually struggling with more mental health conditions.
Okay, notice right there. She took a man's problem and made it about women. If I Google who commits suicide more, teenage men or women? Males die by suicide more frequently. This discrepancy is known as the gender paradox in suicide. So again, you have both women, right? One's claiming traditionalism, but they make all of the problems that affect men, they make about women. They completely do it. So if there's a men's mental health crisis, it's what about women's issues?
And young men, they are statistically much more likely to be anxious, to be depressed. The CDC found that in 2021, 1 in 3 teenage girls seriously contemplated taking her own life.
I want to see how bad the discrepancy is because male versus female. Men make up 80% of suicides. And we're talking about women's mental health. 80% of suicides, and we're saying, but women have the mental health issues. It's women. Like, it drives me nuts. Drives me crazy.
And it's so...
And I don't, like, she probably just memorizes talking points. I don't I don't know how much like in depth, like the stuff she's saying is stuff I've heard like in conservative media for 10 years. So I don't know how in depth she's gone on this stuff. But again, if conservatives really cared about traditionalism, they would get rid of these systems that punish men for being traditional. They would. And that would be their number one issue. But they do not care about it. They don't. Because they spend a million hours talking about men and women's sports, abortion, all this white noise that distracts from the real issues because they make money off of women. So you have to pander and say, oh, but women's mental health, because the female, even conservatives get paid by women. I'd have 1 million subscribers on the, you know what? I would have a billion subscribers on the website if I just pandered to women. You guys are lucky I have integrity, because if I Steve Harvey'd it, oh my gosh, you would be rich. You would be rich.
Hard for me to wrestle with this idea that we claim to live in the most progressive society in human history where anything is possible and you can do whatever you want and there are no consequences to your actions and you can make your life brick by brick exactly what you want it to be. Yet we're devoiding society of purpose and meaning and fulfillment entirely, which is why we end up feeling so lost now. All right, you go ahead and reply, and then I have another question for you guys.
Yeah. So I actually disagree that we're devoid of purpose, because I think the entire purpose of deviating from this idea that motherhood and wifehood are the key identifiers of a woman, I feel like that is what devoids women of purpose. And this idea that you can achieve whatever you want and you can be whatever you want, is the intention of that is to help women find their purpose, because so many people had to put their dreams and desires aside to lift up the men in their life. And now we're saying, no, we want.
They were farmers, coal miners, and factory workers. I think by the 1940s, 40% of men were factory workers, but 1800s, at one point, 90% of men were farmers. I think we see things on TV sometimes and we just think like a man's life is just easy. They just put on a suit, go to work, Wolf of Wall Street it. But they gotta stop giving us movies. We see the movies and we think it's nothing, that the men just go to work, don't do anything, and get a bunch of money and status. Yeah.
The opportunity, and we want to find our own purpose, and that doesn't always have to be motherhood and wifehood.
Okay.
If I learned anything from interviewing 1,000 women, it's that there's a ton of women that absolutely should not have children. Absolutely not. You're telling me that woman that had sex with 1,000 men. Conservatives drive me nuts sometimes. You're telling me you want her to have children. Like, that would be a good idea. Maybe if she didn't do the sex work, but now, no.
There was a lot there. I feel like there's so many things I wanted to ask within you guys going back and forth, but real quick, going back to the gender pay gap, have any of these studies that either of you read had anything to do with a woman who might be less likely to ask for a raise than a man? I've read something about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked. So the Harvard Business Review actually did a study where they found that women who requested a higher or an increase in their wages were seen as less likable and more aggressive than men at the same companies asking for the same thing. And
see, the men don't care if they're seen as not likable or aggressive. They're going to ask.
were therefore less likely to be granted that pay increase and less likely to be given promotions. And so you can see in that culture how women would then be discouraged from asking, because then you're seen as less likable and it's going to create more hostility in the workplace, which is unpleasant. And so that's reducing women's opportunities for growth.
What are your thoughts on that? I just think it's not quite indicative of what we're seeing with patterns in society today. Women are statistically much more likely to seek out a college degree today. They are overwhelmingly the majority of college students and graduates. Women are twice as likely, according to some studies, to be hired for the same job as men, and twice as likely to be promoted for the same job as men within the same company, depending on which studies you're looking at. So the problem with statistics and evidence is that it doesn't really tell the whole picture, right? And I think that's exactly what we're seeing with this idea of the gender pay gap. You can certainly find a company that might be.
Men make 80% of the world's stuff. 80% of the food supply. They run the entire infrastructure. Women only have 20% of infrastructure jobs, and that even includes the women holding the flags at construction sites. They count. They count.
Paying their female employees less than men, which would be a horrible practice, but that's not accounting for the general societal trends of women taking more time off of work because they're having children and embracing maternity leave. Maybe they leave their job for a few years and end up coming back. They might work in a job, as I mentioned earlier, like a teacher that doesn't work 52 weeks out of the year. So if you're dividing their annual salary of 38 weeks by 52 weeks, of course that's going to look abhorrently low. When in reality, mathematicians and economists have proven over and over and over again, when you account for job of choice, when you account for educational field of choice historically, which is dramatically changing today in the 2020s, and when you account for potential time off from maternity leave or taking a sabbatical from work, there is no such thing as the gender pay gap. And if there were, why wouldn't every company in the United States only be hiring women? If we live in this evil capitalistic society where these evil bosses want to make so much more money and withhold that from their employees, which I hear all the time, why wouldn't we only be hiring women to save companies and CEOs that much more money in the process? Yeah, what do you think of that? That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, and again, we're reading completely different
Yeah,
studies
you're
because
just going back and forth.
Yeah.
And we don't have like a specific study to bring
Which is
forth. A problem in and of itself, right? I often say in 2024 America, we're living in two different Americas, and we're watching society really rip in half between one reality and another reality, often along the lines of red states and blue states. I think it's inarguable that that's the reality we live in, but that's the problem with our society being devoid of objective truth, right? It's why I do what I do every day. When we lack an objective standard for what is real and what is not, because my truth is different from your truth in society, all of a sudden anything is true. Anything can be proven, anything has data and statistics behind it, and we lack the opportunity to have real meaningful conversations about what's best for humanity.
Yeah, and I do want to say too, when you mention things like teachers, it is true that when we look at a broad scope of women's careers versus men's careers, especially historically, women do again, they're pushed into it, and so now we have more opportunity. But women were typically secretaries, nurses, teachers, and fields that were female dominated were underpaid.
In what time period? I think they're talking about the 1900s.
And continue to be underpaid because they're female dominated. There's a principle called male flight that when more women enter into a career field, men leave, and then the wages for that position tend to either stagnate, they don't continue to increase as in.
Oh, I want to say something, but I can't. I can't. Okay, let me think. So she's saying her study says that when women go into a career field, men leave and the wages don't increase. Is it possible that they don't do as good of a job? Not all, not all, not all.
Inflation in the years increase or they decrease because women are now in those positions. And so we have to account for.
I wish I was there because I I could see her face if I said, yeah, because they do a worse job. It would be really funny. It would be really funny.
Like you said, maternity leave. We have to account for all these things. When we're looking at the gender pay gap, there are statistics that show equal degrees, equal positions, they're paid differently. But also from a more broader societal perspective, women have found themselves in positions that are compensated less because they're seen as lesser than.
Okay, so
I want to go to this topic of purpose, women, freedom of choice. You mentioned something about women not finding their purpose to be motherhood or being wives, but I have a feeling, at least from my own lived experience, that motherhood and being married to my husband is the most.
What age? What age did you do it? I mean, that would be my question because it's one thing to say that, right? But if that was your number one choice, you would have did it first. Not saying right or wrong. What age? I don't know this commentator in the middle.
Most important thing I've ever done. Far more valuable being a mother than this podcast. Let's just be real. I love this podcast, but it's nowhere near compares to being a mother. So I imagine people listening who are mothers, I would think people might want to discuss this together about that based on something you brought up. So why don't you elaborate a little more on that and then you can respond.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this is all about choice. I think that the whole point is realizing that both choices are valid and everything is going to be different for every woman because we're so unique and we're so individual. And motherhood and being a wife can be incredibly fulfilling, which is why I'm pro choice in all ways of life because I don't think that it is my ability. I don't think that it is my responsibility or that I even have the ability to say what will make you happy or what will make you happy, which is why we should all have equal opportunity and respect everyone's choices to do either, to be a traditional wife and mother, to do a little bit of the in between, or to be a full on career woman. I think all of those are valid for different women.
You mentioned earlier something that stuck with me, that embracing marriage or motherhood in the past for our mothers and grandmothers was elevating the men in their life rather than putting themselves first. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically women were encouraged to stay home, take care of the house, take care of the kids, while their husband, father, the father of their children, went after their dreams. They went after the promotions. They dedicated their life to work and whatever.
Farming? Coal mining? Factory worker? I mean, when I Googled it, that's what it said the job options were back then. What dreams? You had to be born into a royal family. A peasant? What was a welder? I don't.
Their passion was and whatever their purpose was. And so women's jobs weren't necessarily to discover what their purpose and their passions are. If it happened to be outside of motherhood and wifehood, it was instead to be like, we'll just encourage him to do what he needs to do and you pick up all the pieces while he's out there.
Do you think that's still true today? That marriage is inherently elevating men or motherhood is inherently
Riley Reid got married. It's done. There's no Nala got married. You guys, conservatives, you let everybody in and you ruined it. I don't know what to tell you. You simped for women. You believed all these abuse claims. You believed the hoes that came into church and said they were born again. No one was shocked that the divorce rate today, if you look at the divorce stats, it's not different for people that are Christian, Catholic, it's all the same or similar. So congratulations, it's dead. The average marriage is 8 years. Doesn't exist. It's gone. Sorry. If you make it work, you're the exception, you're not the rule. I hope you do. I really do. I wouldn't bet on it if I was a betting woman.
elevating men?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are statistics that show that even when women and men in the same households are working the same amount of hours, they're both full-time working parents, men or women will be more likely to be in charge of the kids' schedules, do all of the housework, and have more of that mental load of the household. So even when in our modern society where really economically families can't, a lot of us can't be single income, we have to be dual income, a lot of that load still lands on the woman and there's a domestic labor gap.
I think that follows with what young women are being told today, that marriage and motherhood is never something that you should pursue because it's going to be
Are choosing. are choosing, are choosing, are choosing, are choosing, are choosing.
Mental load on you. It's going to bring stress and hardship and negativity to your life, which obviously manifests in the trends that we're seeing societally. You know, we have the lowest marriage rate right now since we began recording marriage rates in 1867. And we hit an all-time low in the last 100 years fertility rate in 2020, to the point that convincing that you are going to be miserable when you tie the knot and spend the rest of your life with one individual. That's echoed through every single headline and viral social media video that we see at the exact same time. And even more so, the life is going to be sucked out of you if you bring more life into the world. But that's been proven to be the opposite over and over and over again through every generation. The overwhelmingly happiest people in society who self-report the most purpose, the most meaning, the most fulfillment in their life are mothers and wives. So how do you reconcile the difference between that?
Yeah, again, depends on the studies that you look at. And
I mean, you guys can just go on TikTok and you find both. Women treat TikTok like their diary. You'll find ladies that say, "Oh, I'm super happy, trad life." Then you find women complaining about their husband, then divorce. Like, I'm not discounting that the people that stay married are the happiest. Could be. But you got to get the state. Like, choices reveal more than what people say. Choices are going to reveal the most. So, but the challenge is we can't make free choices when the state is holding a gun to the men's head and making them stay.
recognize you continue to use this word never. Women are told that they should never get married and never have children. And I push back on that because I disagree. Again, I think the idea is encouraging choice, encouraging intentional choice. Is this really the person you want to be with? Is this someone you can see as a partner? Is being a mother something that you couldn't imagine your life without? Women are not being told to never do those things. We're being told.
Well, they are quite frequently, actually. Not by you, perhaps, but by many, many people in society. Many of the most.
Again, they're being told, I'm just so over it. I'm so over women blaming society that caters to women that we're being told by society, which caters to us anyways, that we're being, they make it sound like we're groomed into the choices we make. I mean, how many people told the girl that had sex with 1,000 men, 100 men, don't make that choice? Okay, so that's all I got for you guys today. I just thought this debate was interesting. I wanted to react to it. Let me know what you guys think, and if you like it, I'll do more tomorrow. If not, I'll pick something else. Like the video on your way out and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. Like the video on your way out and go to theaudacitynetwork.com. I'm actually going to show you guys our merch too before we go. Give me some feedback on these, because I was trying to debate what kind of merch to do. And so I just picked like tweets of mine that went viral. So on the left, we got equal rights, equal lefts. It's just pearlymerch.com. Make men valuable again. I just was trying to play on the MAGA, you know, and I meant like valuable to society, like have society value men again. But the next one, why lie? She'll complain anyway. I just thought it was funny. The other one I can't read on YouTube, so, you know, you just got to go see that for yourself. Anyways, guys, like the video. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Pearl Daily, and I'll see you guys tomorrow at 3 o'clock Central. Bye-bye.